Again, thank you all so much for being here today. My name is Justin Settles. I am the project specialist for the Identification and Recruitment Consortium. Today's webinar is entitled Difficult Eligibility Scenarios, Focusing on Areas of Growth. Today, we will review identification and recruitment scenarios based on the topics recruiters struggle with the most. We have reviewed the results from the past year of the IDRC Recruiter assessment and highlighted the areas where recruiters have struggled. While an answer is provided for each scenario, there will be polls available for everybody to participate in to make this webinar interactive, as well as opportunities to share your thoughts in the chat box as well. Over the past year and a half, we have found continuously the need for more and more eligibility scenarios. Eligibility scenarios continue to be one of the most viewed portions of the IDRC website. So we are really excited about this webinar today, the ability to share knowledge and to work through these scenarios together. As we mentioned, all of the scenarios that are going to be presented today are based off of the areas that the IDRC Consortium has found that recruiters struggle with the most. We identified these areas using the results over the last year from the IDRC Recruiter assessment. For those that might not be aware or familiar with the Recruiter assessment, the IDRC Recruiter assessment is a free tool that all states can use to evaluate recruiter knowledge and to identify where recruiters can grow. We looked at the results over the last year, broken down into categories, and identified the 4 categories and the questions where recruiters from all over the country were struggling. If you would like to take the IDRC Recruiter assessment, if you have not done so yourself, please have a supervisor or recruiting coordinator reach out to either me or Jessica Castaneda from the IDRC, and we'll be more than happy to provide codes so that you may take the assessment. According to the results of the IDRC assessment, recruiters around the country struggled the most with the following categories. Number 1, residency dates. And the questions on the assessment related specifically to identifying residency dates or to general knowledge about what residency dates were. Recruiters were only able to answer 63.6% of the questions correctly. This is by far the topic that recruiters struggled with the most. Recruiters struggled with identifying when the residency date is, when it's different from the QAD, and even defining what the residency date is. The next topic that recruiters struggled with is the qualifying arrival date. Being able to identify correctly when the qualifying arrival date is in a given scenario. This is especially surprising considering how crucial identifying the qualifying arrival date is to the everyday work of recruiters. Recruiters have to work through eligibility scenarios in their day-to-day jobs, and every day have to be deciding when a qualifying arrival date is for a student. And so we need to make sure that they are on top of their game and that their knowledge is sharp so that they can correctly identify when students are eligible. After the qualifying arrival date, the next topic that recruiters struggled with were comments. Identifying when comments were needed, what comments were needed, as well as what should be included in the comments, with recruiters only being able to answer 78.43% of the questions correctly. And then lastly, the last topic that recruiters struggled with were to join moves. Identifying the qualifying arrival date into join moves, identifying when to join moves are happening. Oftentimes to join moves are some of the most difficult moves that recruiters will encounter while out in the field, some of the most difficult scenarios. And so it makes sense that this would be something that they would struggle with and would need extra practice with. All scenarios presented during this webinar are based around these 4 areas of improvement in order to help us as a group improve our knowledge. Some of the presented scenarios are inspired directly from the questions that were most missed on the assessment. And so you may see some scenarios, if you've taken the assessment before, that are familiar to some of the things that you have seen. And these scenarios are good tools in preparation to help prepare you to take the assessment. For each scenario, there will be a poll that is presented with several questions that you can answer. We ask that everybody participates by reading through the scenario on the screen and answering the questions. For some questions, for some scenarios, there will also be an opportunity to answer a further question in the chat box. And so we ask again for as many people as possible to participate so we can all work through these scenarios together. Now on to the first scenario. I will read through the scenario. The poll will appear on the screen, and I'll give you all a couple minutes to work through the questions. A family of 5, a mom, a dad, and 3 children, engaged in qualifying work on a dairy farm. The work lasted for 6 months, according to the father. On January 4th, 2021, the worker, the dad, left the work at the dairy and returned to Virginia, where he began working at a shipping warehouse. The 3 children and mother stayed in New York to finish out the school year. On August 10th, 2021, the mother and the 3 children returned to Virginia for the new school year. The local recruiter interviewed the family on November 21st, 2021. All right. I'll give everyone a second to read through again the scenario and look at the questions in the poll.
Justin, if you want, we can go on the polls until I can see that the majority of people have participated. So we're about 43 or so of the 152 so far.
Okay, I sent you a message in chat, Jessica.
Okay, perfect.
As Jessica said, we'll give everybody a couple more minutes to look over the scenario and answer the questions in the poll.
Okay, so it looks like we've got about 100 65%, 68%. So it's kind of moving up kind of fast right now. We're at 108 of 154. So maybe wait 30 seconds and then I'll end the poll, and I'm going to see if when I end it, if it shows the results for everybody. And if not, I will make sure that I read them out. Can you see the shared answers? Anybody? So it looks like on number one, 97% of you said yes, 4% or 3% of you said no to whether the children are eligible for MEP. On number two, 46% of you said May 5th was the qualifying arrival date. 3% said January 4th, and 50% said August 10th. And then 2% said the children are not eligible. On number three, when looking at the residency date, 25% of you said May 5th, 3% said January 4th, 70% said August 10th, and 2% said children not eligible. And on comments, we're divided to how many comments are required. On number one, 37% said only one comment, 37% said two comments, 17% said three comments, and 10% said no comments needed. So we're all over the place.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, so let's look at the first question. Are the children eligible for the Migrant Education Program? If we look at the guidance and read what the guidance says about who is eligible for the program, it states that a child is considered a migratory child if the following conditions are met. Number one, the child is not older than 21 years of age, and the child is entitled to a free public education through grade 12 under state law, or the child has not yet at a grade level at which the LEA provides a free public education, and the child made a qualifying move in the preceding 36 months as a migratory agricultural worker or a migratory fisher, or did so with, to precede a parent, guardian, or spouse who is a migratory agricultural worker or fisher. And so in this particular scenario, when we are looking to see whether or not they qualified, is there a migratory agricultural worker? Yes, there is a migratory agricultural worker because the father made a move, and then engaged in work on the dairy farm. The work on the dairy farm only lasted for 6 months, so the work then is considered temporary work. Are the children under the age of 22? Yes, all the children are under the age of 22, and yes, the children are still eligible to receive a public education. And so then we have to look to see if the children made that qualifying move with the migratory agricultural worker. And in this situation, the children did make a qualifying move in the last 36 months to join a migratory agricultural worker. And so in this particular scenario, yes, the children are eligible for the Migrant Education Program. And so everybody did a great job. 94% of people polled said yes. And so 94% of us got it correct that yes, the children are eligible. Moving on, when talking about the qualifying arrival date, remember that the qualifying arrival date is the date of the most recent qualifying move was completed. A qualifying move is considered complete when both the student and migratory agricultural worker are together in a new residence. So when we're working through a scenario to try to figure out what the qualifying arrival date, we are looking to see when is the most recent move that was completed. And so in this particular instance here, you have the father and the children, they move separately. First, the father moves in January, and then the children move later in August to join the father in the new location. And so in this particular question, the qualifying arrival date is then going to be that date in August 10th, 2021, when the children moved to join the father, because that is the most recent date that a move was completed. And so again, 50% of people on the polls said that the qualifying arrival date was August 10th. And so well done, everybody, for getting that correct. Now for question 3 about the residency date. According to page 4 of the National COE instructions, the residency date is the date the students moved into their current school district. So we are looking for the date that they arrived in their current school district. And so the latest move that they made was on August 10th, 2021, when they joined their father. And so the residency date as well will also be August 10th of 2021. So looking at the poll, 70% of people said it was going to be August 10th. And so well done, everybody, for getting that correct. Jessica, I think you sent me a question. Is that a question that
So that, yes, that's a question for you. You had a question that, did they make 2 qualifying moves?
So looking in this scenario, again, in a scenario, it is possible for multiple qualifying moves to have been made. So in here, you had a earlier qualifying move back when the children moved with the father from Virginia to New York in May, and then the father engaged in that temporary work. But in every scenario that we encounter, whether it be practice scenarios like this or out in the field, again, we're looking for the most recent moves. And so just because there is a possible earlier qualifying move, you want to make sure that you're basing your eligibility off the most recent qualifying moves, because that's what's going to give the students a longer eligibility period. And so in this case, when you have the child and the worker make a second move, even though they move separately and it was a to join move, that still counts as a qualifying move. And so that is the move that you're going to base your eligibility on, because it's the most recent move. All right, and now for question 4 about comments. How many comments are required on the COE? It's important to remember that the COE will always tell you exactly how many comments are needed, are required. It'll tell you where the comments are required by looking at section 3 about the qualifying moves and work. You will see the note saying to provide comments when needed. Comments when completing a COE are always necessary when the child moves separately from the worker. So when the child moves to join or to precede a worker, or when the worker engages in work for more than 60 days after the move, when finding eligibility based on a recent history of moves, that's using 4B, a comment is required, or when the work is temporary, or when work is for personal substance. And so these are all the points on the COE when a comment is required. And so going back and looking at our scenario, we're going to look to see which of these are mentioned. And as you can see, going back, reading through, there are 2 instances that line up with, needing and requiring a comment on the COE. You have number 1, where the father was working on a dairy farm. So that is temporary work. And so a comment is required there explaining why the work was temporary. And then reading on, you have another comment required because the child and the children and the migratory agricultural worker moved separately. And so in this particular scenario, you're going to have 2 comments that are required. One telling you how you know the work is temporary, and one telling you why the child and the worker moved separately. And so if you wouldn't mind, take a second, and I would love to hear everybody in chat write out their comments for how they would leave comments on the COE for this scenario. Tell us what you would write as your chat, or what you would write in the chat box as your comments. And meanwhile, as people are writing those out, we do have a couple questions. Number one, Rosa asked, was the move made due to economic necessity? In this particular scenario, the moves were made due to economic necessity. The move that the migratory agricultural worker made on the most recent move on January 4th, the father left the work at the dairy and began a new job at a different location. Leaving to work at a new job is considered economic necessity. Myra asked, is shipping warehouse an eligible agricultural activity? No, working at a shipping warehouse is not an eligible agricultural activity, but the father is already a migratory agricultural worker because of the work they had previously done in the dairy. And so when the father made that qualifying move and then engaged in temporary work at the dairy farm, they are then considered to be a migratory agricultural worker. And once somebody is considered to be a migratory agricultural worker, they can be considered to be a migratory agricultural worker for up to 36 months. And then Lucia asked, so the QAD should be the most recent move, even though that last move wasn't migratory. The most recent move, the qualifying arrival date, is always going to be the most recent move, the date the most recent move was completed with to join or to proceed a migratory agricultural worker. And so in this particular scenario, the date that the most recent move was completed would be August 10th, because that is the most recent move made to join the migratory agricultural worker, who is the father. All right. Now to read some of the comments that you all had put. Aurora put, according to the father, the work would only be temporary work for 6 months. Dolores wrote that the father stated the work would only last for 6 months. All of these are great. And then Sandra wrote, worker worked for 6 months at a dairy farm milking cows, and the worker moved first to find a job and a home, and then the mom and children arrived later to join the worker. Again, that is a terrific comment that tells you everything that you need to know about why the work was temporary and why the child and worker moved separately. Awesome. I think looking through, Yusalia wrote that the worker stated he milked cows for 6 months, and then the father moved to Virginia to find work in a home, and the family moved later to join the worker. All of those are great examples of comments. Great job, everybody. All right, we're going to move on now to the next scenario. Jessica, if you could put up the next poll, please. All right. Anastasia and her 5-year-old son, Rodrigo, moved from Mexico to Seattle, Washington on April 10th, 2021. Adriana started waiting tables in a restaurant on May 28th, 2020. Adriana and Rodrigo then moved to Woodburn, Oregon, where she started harvesting hops on August 5th, 2021. They then moved to Eugene, Oregon, where Adriana finds work in a restaurant. Sorry. Let me make a quick change. 2020. All right, apologize. Let's try this again. Anastasia and her 5-year-old son, Rodrigo, moved from Mexico to Seattle, Washington on April 10th, 2020. Adriana started waiting tables in a restaurant on May 28th, 2020. And then Anastasia and Rodrigo moved to Woodburn, Oregon, where she started working harvesting hops on August 5th, 2020. They then moved to Eugene, Oregon, where Adriana again finds work in a restaurant on August 30th, 2020. An MEP recruiter identifies the families on February 12th, 2021. Right. Just like before, we'll have the poll up and we'll give everybody a second to read through and answer the questions. So we have, yes, sorry, I apologize. We had taken the scenario from a previous situation and one of the names did not get changed. It is Anastasia, not Adriana. You can see here. And so we have another question about what are hops? Hops are, what is used to make beer. And so it's something that is planted and harvested. It is considered an agricultural activity. And so you see a lot of it, it's a up and coming crop that we're seeing more and more of around the country, particularly in the Northwest. Michigan has a lot of hops, Washington, Oregon, Idaho especially has a lot of hops as well.
Right now we're at 74 of 170 so far that have answered.
Jessica, for those that are struggling to see the polls, do you know if they click on, do they have a poll button to see the polls again on their side?
They should, yes.
Exit it out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we've got almost 100 of them have viewed it. So it's live and I can't do anything on my end other than you guys look for the polls. Okay, we are at over 100, so I will go ahead and end the poll here and give you the results. Okay, so on question number 1, is there a migratory agricultural worker? 97% say yes. Question number 2, is there a migratory agriculture worker, and when, if there is, when did they become a worker? And 2% say April 10th, 5% say May 28th, 90% say August 5th, 3% say there is no migratory agriculture worker. Number 3, is the child eligible for MEP? 95% say yes, 5% say no. If they are eligible on question number 4, we have August 30th with 60% saying it's August 30th, with 35% saying it's August 5th, 2% saying it's February 12th, and 3% say the child is not eligible.
Thank you very much, Jessica. All right, so let's begin with the first, looking at to see, is there a migratory agricultural worker? If we read the guidance and where the guidance discusses what is a migratory agricultural worker, on chapter 2, question C1 on page 15 of the guidance, A migratory agricultural worker is defined as anybody who in the last 36 months made a qualifying move and within 60 days of that move engaged in new work that is seasonal or temporary in agricultural or fishing. Or somebody can be considered a migratory agricultural worker if they made a qualifying move and then actively sought new qualifying work, but were unable to engage in the work and they have a recent history of moves. So in this particular scenario, we're looking to see whether Anastasia, the mother, made a qualifying move and then engaged in work that was considered seasonal, temporary, and agricultural fishing, or if they had that recent history of moves. And in this particular scenario, the mother, she moved to Oregon and then worked harvesting hops. From the chat box, again, we wanted to include this scenario because, again, hops is an up and coming crop that we're seeing more and more of around the country, especially as it's being used in more, the beer industry is growing and it's a constant, many different breweries need hops as well as it's being used for other purposes. And so it's a growing crop that is being very productive. And so you're starting to see many farms turn to it. And so some people might not be familiar with hops. And so we encourage you, to look up to see if there are any hop farms in your area as well. Even in states that are not in the Northwest, as I mentioned, like Washington or Oregon or Idaho, Michigan. You also have, hop farms in New York and Vermont, even in the South, seen hop farms in South Carolina and a few other states. And so, do the research to look and to see if there's, hop farms in your area. And so because, she did make that move and harvested the hops soon after the move, Anastasia is a migratory agricultural worker. And so when did they become that migratory agricultural worker? On August 5th, 2020, on August 5th, when they moved and engaged in the harvesting of hops. And so there was 90% of you all that got that right in the poll. And so are the children now eligible for the Migrant Education Program? Moving on, looking at question 3. Are the children eligible for the Migrant Education Program? So yes, there is that migratory agriculture worker. As we mentioned, the mother made that move and engaged in harvesting hops. Yes, the children are under the age of 22. Then yes, the children are still eligible for a free public education. And because, they moved after they became the migratory agricultural worker, you see that they did make that qualifying move with the migratory agricultural worker. And so in this scenario, we're looking to see, when is that most recent move that they would make. And so the most recent move would be August 30th, 2020, when they moved back to Eugene, Oregon. And so the qualifying arrival date is going to be August 30th, because that's the most recent move made with the migratory agricultural worker. And so 60% of people got that one correct. Way to go, everybody, on identifying, when that latest move is. All right, Jessica, is it possible for after the polls are up, does it continue to show the poll results so that everybody can see them?
We can, I just stopped sharing it just a little bit ago. We can keep this next one up until we open up the next one. That's fine.
Yeah, if we can keep it up for a little bit longer. All right, so scenario 3. On September 15th, 2020, Angelica moved to Portland, Maine with her 8-year-old son and 9-year-old daughter. Angelica moved to Maine so the kids could enter school at the beginning of the school year. Angelica's husband, Julio, planned to join with Angelica and the children for blueberry season in Maine. On May 2nd, 2021, Julio moved to Portland, Maine, and began work picking blueberries. The recruiter in Maine spoke to the family on June 1st, 2021. Right? The poll is up. And again, we'll give everybody a few minutes to read through and answer the questions. We'll give it a few more minutes for everybody to answer. Again, I see some people who, if, as a bonus question, if a comment is needed, let us know in chat what you would write for the comment.
Okay, we had about 113 of you guys so far, so we'll go ahead and end the poll, but I will share the results. So sharing the results right now. Right now we have number 1, are the children eligible for MEP? 87% of you said yes. 13% of you said no. On number 2, if eligible, when is the child's QAD? 6% of you said September 15th. 81% of you said May 2nd. 1% said June 1, and 13% of you said the children are not eligible. Number 3, if eligible, when is the child's residency date? 60% of you said September 15th, 25% said May 2nd, 3% said June 1, and 13% said the children are not eligible. And on number 4, is a comment required on the COE? 87% of you said yes, 13% said no.
Thank you so much, Jessica. All right. So to begin with the first question, are the children eligible? So again, we're looking to see if they meet all the requirements outlined in the non-regulatory guidance for eligibility. And so in this particular question, is there a migratory agricultural worker? Yes, the father made a qualifying move and soon after the move engaged in picking blueberries. So the father is considered to be a migratory agricultural worker based on their move to Maine. Are the children of age? The children are 8 years old and 9 years old, so they are under the age of 22. Are they eligible for free public education? Yes, they are still eligible for free public education. And so did they make a qualifying move? And so, yes, the child made a qualifying move to precede the migratory agricultural worker. And so again, the children in this particular situation moved first so they could enter the school year, so they could have the whole school year in their new location. And so again, great job, everybody. 87% had said that they were eligible. And so 87% got the question correct. So on to question 2, what is the qualifying arrival date? Again, remember, for the qualifying arrival date, you were looking for the most recent date that the qualifying move was completed. And so we're looking the most recent date that the child student were in a new location with the migratory agricultural worker. And so in this particular instance, we're looking to see, since the children moved first and the worker moved second, the qualifying move is completed on the date that the worker moved to join the children in the new location. And so in this instance, the qualifying arrival date is May 2nd, 2021, when the father moved to Maine. And so again, congratulations, everybody. 81% was correct. Remember that in to join moves, if a child moves separately from the worker, if the child moves first, then the worker has 12 months to join the child in the new location. Or if the worker moves first, then the child has 12 months to join them in a new location. So as long as they move within that 12-month period to be together in the new location, it is considered a qualifying move. And so now moving on to the residency date. Remember again that the residency date is the date that the student moved into their current school district. And so we're looking to see when the student arrived. And so in this particular instance, the residency date would be on September 15th, 2020, because that is the date that the child moved to their school district. And so when the children move to precede the migratory agricultural worker, then the residency date is going to be the date that the children moved. We have one question in chat that says, what if it takes longer than 12 months to complete a to join move? Again, the guidance states that for a move to join move to be considered a qualifying move, it has to be completed within that 12 months. And so if you find an instance where it took longer than 12 months for the migratory agriculture worker and the child to join in a new location, then they are not considered, that is not considered a qualifying move. All right. Question 4, is a comment needed on the COE? In this particular instance, yes, a comment is required on the COE because the student moved to precede the migratory agricultural worker, and you need a comment to explain why the worker and the child moved separately. All right. And so you would have to have a comment explaining why the child and the worker move separately. In this particular instance, we saw several examples before saying a comment was needed for the to join move. What should that comment say? You know, the comment should list that the child moved first, or the child moved to precede the worker so that they could begin and start the school year. All right. We had one question from Jose asking, can you help me better understand and connect the economic necessity piece of the child and the mother's move? This move is still considered a qualifying move made due to economic necessity because, again, you're looking at the move as a whole. And so even though there are two separate moves, the move with the child and the move with the worker, the move is still considered to be due to economic necessity because the worker moved in order to find that job picking blueberries. And so since the worker moved to find that job picking blueberries, the move and even the move of the child and the mother is still considered to be due to economic necessity. We've had a couple people asking to see what a potential COE would look like. We can get that and provide that on the IDRC website after the training is complete. There are several other scenarios, several other presentations we've done with scenarios that show and demonstrate what the COE looks like, but we can get images of what the COEs, practice COEs for these would look like up on the website. Josiah asks, is the residency date always tied to the QAD? What if you have a non-qualifying move to a new school district after the qualifying move? Would you put the residency date as the latest move or the qualifying arrival date? Again, the residency date is not always tied to the qualifying arrival date. In this particular scenario, as we saw, the residency date is different from the qualifying arrival date. And so the residency date is always going to be the date that the student moved into their current school district. And so Josiah, in the particular instance that you mentioned, if a non-qualifying move is made to a new school district after the qualifying move, then the residency date would be the date that they moved to that new school district, and the qualifying arrival date would be the date of the previous qualifying move that was made. I do not know if we'll have time to get to that scenario, but there's a scenario further in this presentation that discusses just that particular situation. Right, moving on to scenario 4. Right, Jessica, if you'd put the poll up, please. A family with 3 school-age children moved to Charleston, South Carolina from Knoxville, Tennessee on October 19th, 2020. Soon after arriving, the father began working on a fishing boat sorting oysters while the mother stayed at home to take care of the children. On February 11th, 2021, the whole family moved to Charlotte, North Carolina to begin working with family members in a new store they opened. On September 6, 2021, the mother separated from the father and moved with the 3 children to Atlanta, Georgia to live with her sister while the father remained in Baton Rouge. A recruiter finds the family in Atlanta, Georgia on September 20th, 2021. I'll give everybody a few minutes to answer the polls. I believe this will, due to time, we're almost up at an hour. This will probably be the last scenario we do. We'll share the rest of the presentation with further scenarios on the IDRC website for everybody to review after. Still give everybody a couple minutes to fill out the poll.
Okay, looks like we got about 100 or so of you guys that have participated so far. We'll go ahead and share the results up to now. So number one, is the child eligible for MEP? 88% of you said yes, 13% said no. Number two, if eligible, when is the child's QAD? We're kind of all over the place on this one. 42% of you say October 19th, 2020. 29% say February 11th, 2021. 18% say September 6th, 2021. And 12% say the children are not eligible. Number three, if eligible, when is the child's residency date? October 19th, 14%. February 11th, 8%. September 6th, 66%. And 12% say the children are not eligible. Number four is a comment required on the COE. 78% of you say yes, and 22% say no.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, this one seems like it was a little bit tougher for people. And so we'll work through it and answer any questions that may come up. All right. So to begin with, are the children eligible for the Migrant Education Program? In this particular situation, yes, the children are eligible for MEP. Number one, there was a migratory agricultural worker. The father made that move to Charleston, South Carolina, where they engaged in work sorting oysters on a fishing boat. Sorting oysters is considered, fishing work, as well as it would be temporary work because the work lasted less than 12 months. And so we see now that the father is a migratory agricultural worker based on that temporary work sorting oysters. Are the children of age? Yes, all three children are still of age to be enrolled in school, which means they're also eligible for free public education. And did the children make a qualifying move? And so seeing here that yes, the children made the qualifying move in the last 36 months to precede the migratory agricultural worker. And so now we know that the children are eligible for the Migrant Education Program. So everybody, 87% of you said yes. Congratulations. 87% got it correct that yes, the children are eligible for the Migrant Education Program. And so now this is where things can get a little tricky. Next question, answers were all over the place, looking about when was that qualifying arrival date for the family. And so again, when we're looking at the qualifying arrival date, now go back to the scenario here so we can see it before moving on. You want to find the most recent date that a qualifying move was completed with a migratory agricultural worker. And so we know the father became a migratory agricultural worker when they moved, from South Carolina, when they moved to South Carolina from Tennessee in October of 2020. But then the next move they made on February 11th, 2021, again, was with the father. So again, that's another qualifying move. And so you have a qualifying move on February 11th. And then if you look on September 6th, the children move with the mother, but they do not move with the father. And so on September 6th, 2021, that is not considered to be a qualifying move because it was not made with the migratory agricultural worker. So in this particular scenario, the most recent qualifying move made with the migratory agricultural worker is on February 11th, 2021. And so the QAD would be February 11th, 2021. And so when is the residency date? Again, the residency date is the date that the child arrived in the current school district. After the last scenario, Josiah asked us, what happens if a non-qualifying move is made after a qualifying move? What happens with the residency date? And we can see here in this scenario, even though the move was a non-qualifying move, the residency date is still going to be September 6th, 2021, because that is the date when the children arrived in the current school district. So the qualifying arrival date again is February 11th, 2021, because that's the most recent qualifying move made with the migratory agricultural worker. And the residency date is going to be September 6th, 2021, because that is the date the children arrived in the current school district. I know that question was tricky. When asked about the QAD, only 29% correctly said it was going to be February 11th, 2021. But 66% got the residency date correct. We have a couple questions in chat that I'm seeing. So number one from Josiah that says, is this, does the fact that the parents possibly got a divorce affect eligibility? And so when you're determining eligibility for a student, you are still looking to see if, they made that qualifying move within the last 36 months. And so even though the student is, the father and mother might have been separated, the students did still make that qualifying move in February 11th of 2021 with the migratory agricultural worker. And so that is still the qualifying arrival date. Maria asks, so the first date where the worker moves is not on the COE at all. You would still list the move from Tennessee to South Carolina where they engaged in the qualifying work in fishing. In question 4 in section 3 of the COE, where you are tracking the worker's move history and how they became the migratory agricultural worker. Again, I'll create a COE put it on the IDRC website so you can see what that would look like for this scenario. Juan Carlos asked, how is the QAD February 11th, 2021 when the worker did not engage at that point? Because the worker had on a previous move engaged in qualifying work, they were a migratory agricultural worker. And so even though on February 11th, the father was working in non-qualifying work, they were still a migratory agricultural worker based on that previous move. Right. Remember that once they become a migratory agricultural worker, so in this particular scenario, when they moved from Tennessee to South Carolina on October 19th, 2020, they are considered to be a migratory agricultural worker for 36 months. And so from the father is a migratory agricultural worker from 36 months from October 19th, 2020. And so after that, if the children move with the father within that 36 months and it is a qualifying move, then they can be eligible for the Migrant Education Program.
I think some people are getting confused on the qualifying move on like old rules. Remember qualifying, can you define what a qualifying move is? Just as a reminder that it's not always for agriculture if they're moving with a migratory agricultural worker.
Yes, remember that a qualifying move is a move that is made within the past 36 months that is made with the join to precede a migratory agricultural worker that is from one school district to another, from one residency to another, and made due to economic necessity. And so again, since the move in February 11th, 2021 was with the father who was a migratory agricultural worker, it was due to economic necessity because they were moving for a new job. It was from one residence to another, from one school district to another. It is a qualifying move. Michelle asks, so they would not have been eligible in October. Just because there is a more recent qualifying move does not mean that a previous move was also not a qualifying move. And so, yes, they would have been eligible in South Carolina as well. But remember, when you were in a scenario and trying to figure out eligibility, you were looking for the most recent qualifying move. And so question 4, is a comment needed on the COE? Yes, a comment is required on the COE, but you only need one comment, and that is to say why the work was temporary. Since sorting oysters is temporary work, a comment is required to state that the work was temporary. And so the comment should explain how the recruiter knows. In this particular scenario, the worker moved within 12 months, and so the work was temporary. All right. Are there any other questions about this scenario? I can go back to the scenario so everybody can read it just in case. Awesome. We've already gone over an hour, so we've already kind of reached our time limit. I would like to let everybody know that we do have another webinar scheduled for November 9th. That's going to be all about non-traditional qualifying activities. So activities that are not as common that recruiters should be on the lookout for or should know about. We're going to be talking about fishing. There's a lot more fishing work that goes on around the country that recruiters might miss. We had a lot of questions about hops, and so that's another one that we can discuss during the presentation. And so we would like if people could complete a quick survey. I'm sharing it in the chat, the link in the chat for everybody to see, asking about the non-traditional qualifying activities that you see in your area, as well as any qualifying activities maybe that you have questions with or you struggle with. We all as recruiters are out in the field, and we oftentimes, encounter activities that we're not sure whether or not they're eligible or they qualify. And so feel free to complete that survey to let us know what some of these non-traditional qualifying activities are that you might have questions about or that you encounter, so we can include them in the next webinar on November 9th. Again, thank you all so much for today. I know some of these were difficult, but we worked through them together. The webinar recording is going to be posted on the IDRC website and the IDRC YouTube page, as well as the PowerPoint presentation. And I'll work on getting everybody, I'll post images of potential COEs, what they could look like for these scenarios as well. So you can have those to work through those. If you wouldn't mind, Jessica shared in the chat box a link to the SurveyMonkey training review form that we ask everybody to complete and fill out. Complete it to let us know how we're doing, as well as what other trainings you would like to see from us. You can click on the link, or you can scan the QR code on your screen to take you right to the SurveyMonkey page. If you've never used a QR code before, it's an electronic code that you can scan using the camera on your smartphone that'll open up the link for you. Thank you all again so much for being here. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and be on the lookout for the recording and the PowerPoint presentation on the website. Thank you all so much. Just also as a heads up, while everybody's here, while I remember, we have 2 new exciting announcements that we've made recently. Coming up in December, November, December, we're going to have 2 special conferences available for IDNR staff around the country. We have one conference specifically aimed at data specialists, data entry specialists, talking about the importance of data, the different reports that are out there, how important data is for MEP. And so we just in our recent newsletter sent out the registration link for that. It's going to be in December. Jessica's also posted the registration link in the chat. So if you are a data specialist or work with data with MEP, feel free to sign up. We would love to see you, have you participate. We're also going to be having what we're calling our new recruiter boot camp we hear from a lot of people the need for more training for new recruiters. And so on December 7th and 8th, we're having a conference aimed entirely for recruiters and MEP staff that have been working for 12 months or less. We know there's a lot of new coordinators as well. So if you've only been working for MEP for less than a year, this is the conference for you, designed to get you caught up to speed and get everything that you need to know to be successful. We sent out the registration link for that as well in our newsletter. And so be on the lookout for that. Sign up. We would love for all new recruiters and staff, again, those that have been working for less than a year, to participate. So thank you all so much and have a great rest of your day.